Good evening. I would like to call to order the January 8th, 2018 special meeting of the City of Mayfield Heights. May I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Ballestria.
Present.
Mr. DeJohn.
Here.
Mrs. Finney.
Here.
Mr. Mano.
Here.
Mrs. Sabetta.
Here.
Mrs. Snyder.
Here.
Mrs. Tressi.
Here.
You would please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Excuse me, I'm battling a little bit of a cold here. Apologize. The purpose of this meeting, the special meeting, is to elect a council president, a council president pro tem, a council representative to the Planning Commission, and a council representative to the Mayfield Union Cemetery Board of Trustees. And I would ask at this time for a nomination for council president.
I would place Mrs. Teresi, nominating her for council president.
Okay, we have a nomination. You don't need a second. Do I have any other nominations? Mr.
Mayor.
Ballestria?
I'd like to nominate Mrs. Finney.
Okay, we have a nomination for Mrs. Finney. Are there any other nominations? Okay, I would entertain a motion to then, if there are no other nominations, to close the nominations. I need a motion to close the nominations.
Moved.
Second.
Second by Mr. Ballestria. Roll call on that motion.
Mr. Mano.
Yes.
Mr. Ballestria.
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn.
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta.
Yes.
Mrs. Finney.
Yes.
Mrs. Tressi.
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder.
Yes.
Okay, so I now need a motion to elect Mrs. Teresi. Do I have a motion?
Moved.
Moved.
Second.
Second. Roll call on that motion.
Mr. DeJohn.
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder.
No.
Mrs. Tressi.
Yes.
Mr. Ballestria.
No.
Mr. Mano.
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta.
No.
Mrs. Finney.
No.
3-4 vote.
Okay, that motion has failed. Do I have a motion to elect Mrs. Finney? Moved by Mr. Ballestria,
Second.
second by Mrs. Sabetta. Roll call on that motion.
Mrs. Tressi.
No.
Mrs. Sabetta.
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder.
Yes.
Mr. Mano.
No.
Mrs. Finney.
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn.
No.
Mr. Ballestria.
Yes.
4-3 vote.
Okay, that motion does pass. Congratulations, Mrs. Finney.
Thank you.
I need a nomination now, a motion to nominate a council president pro tem. Do I have any nominations there?
Yes. I would like to nominate Mrs. Snyder.
Okay. Do I have any other nominations? Okay, seeing none, then we will, I need a motion to close the nominations and cast a unanimous ballot. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Finney,
Second.
second by Mr. Ballestria. Roll call on this motion.
Mr. Ballestria.
Yes.
Mrs. Tressi.
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta.
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn.
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder.
Yes.
Mr. Mano.
Yes.
Mrs. Finney.
Yes.
That motion passes. Congratulations, Mrs. Snyder.
Thank you.
I would now need a nomination for the representative to the Planning Commission. Do I have any nominations?
Yes, I'd like to nominate Mr. Mano.
Okay. Do I have any other nominations? Yes.
I'd like
Mrs.
to,
Finney.
I'm sorry, I'd like to nominate Mr. Ballestria.
Okay, are there any other nominations? Okay, seeing none, do I have a motion to close the nomination?
So be it.
Moved by Mr. DeJohn,
Second.
second by Mrs. Finney. Roll call on that motion.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. Belistria?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Tressi?
Yes.
Okay, do I have a motion to elect Mr. Mano?
I'll move.
Moved by Mr. DeJohn,
Second.
second by Mrs. Teresi. Roll call on that motion.
Mrs. Sabetta?
No.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. Belistria?
No.
Mrs. Tressi?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
No.
Mrs. Finney?
No.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
3 to 4 vote.
Okay, that motion has failed. Do I have a motion to elect Mr. Balestria?
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Finney,
Second.
second by Mrs. Sabetta. Roll call on that motion.
Mr. Mano?
No.
Mr. Belistria?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
No.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Tressi?
No.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes.
4 to 3.
That motion has passed. Congratulations, Mr. Balestria.
Thank you.
At this time, I would ask for a nomination for a representative to the Mayfield Union Cemetery Board of Trustees. Any nominations?
I would nominate Mr. Balestria.
Accept.
Accept. Are there any other nominations? Okay, do I have a motion to close the nominations and cast a unanimous ballot?
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Finney, second by Mrs. Snyder. Roll call on that motion.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mrs. Tressi?
Yes.
Mr. Belistria?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Congratulations, Mr. Balestria.
Thank you.
That does conclude all of our elections this evening. I would like to make my appointment for a member of the Board of Zoning Appeals, and I'm going to appoint Mrs. Susan Sabetta to that position.
Thank you. I accept.
Surprise.
And that is, excuse me, Mr. DeJohn?
Nothing. I was just talking to myself.
Okay. Seeing we have no other business in the election portion, do I have a motion to close, or to adjourn the meeting, I should say? Moved by Mrs. Teresi, second by Mrs. Snyder. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we are now adjourned. Thank you.